My name is Daltrey. I am 57 years old, and I spent 35 years pulling wire through concrete and steel. On a Tuesday morning in February, I walked out to get the paper and found two padded envelopes on my front step. My handwriting on both of them, a red return to sender sticker across the top of each one, the names, my own grandchildren's names written in my own hand, crossed out with a thick black marker, hard, like somebody had been angry when they did it. I sat down on the step in my coat. The street was empty. Snow had come overnight, and nobody had shoveled yet. I sat there long enough that my coffee went cold in my hand. I already knew what was in them. I'd packed them myself. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to take you back 6 weeks. Back to a January evening when my son called. I was in the workshop behind the house at the bench, working on a small cedar box. Hand-cut dovetails. I'd been fitting the corners for 2 nights because cedar is soft, and it'll compress if you rush it. The phone lit up on the shelf above the vise, my son's name on the screen. Dad, he had the speakerphone on. I could hear that flat, wide sound it makes. Somebody else was in the room. He said, "Dad, we've been talking. The kids don't really know you. We think it's better if you give everyone some space." He said it the way a man reads off a card. I looked down at the corner of the box in my hand. The joint wasn't quite right on one side. I could feel it without even setting it against a flat surface. I said, "All right," and I hung up. I want to be clear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask him what that meant or who had been doing the talking. I set the phone back on the shelf and went back to fitting that corner. It took me another 20 minutes to get it right. I do not leave things half-finished just because I'm upset. My father taught me that, and he taught me with his hands, not his mouth. 6 weeks went by. I didn't call. He didn't call. And then it was February, and there were the packages on my step. Let me tell you a little about who I am. I retired 4 years ago after 35 years as an industrial electrician. When you work in that trade, you learn that the work doesn't forgive guessing. Every conductor labeled, every termination torqued to spec, every circuit documented before you walk away from it. You get that into your hands and eventually it gets into the rest of your life too, which is maybe why I am the way I am. My wife Loretta died 6 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I wasn't ready, but then nobody ever is. We had one son. He was 31 when she died. He had 2 kids by then. My granddaughter was 10, my grandson was 7. 3 weeks after we buried Loretta, my sister Cynthia drove up from Guelph. She'd spent 30 years as a CPA, and she has a way of sitting down at a kitchen table that makes you feel like the kitchen is now her office. She spread some paperwork out and tapped the first page. RESP applications, she said, 1 for each grandchild. I knew about RESPs in the general way you know about things you've never had to think about directly. Registered Education Savings Plan. Government tops it up if you put money in. She pointed to a line near the top. You sign here, that's the subscriber. That's you. You control the account. She moved her finger to another line further down. And you never sign here. What's that one? Subscribes or change, don't. She looked up at me over her glasses. Don't ever sign that line. Why not? She set the pen down. She was quiet for a second that lasted longer than it needed to. Loretta asked me to tell you that, she said. Not my words, hers. I looked at my sister. Loretta had been in the hospital when she said that. I asked why she would say it. Cynthia picked the pen back up and held it out to me. She said, "You'd understand when the time came. That's all I got." So I signed. Cynthia witnessed it and drove back to Guelph. I put copies in the fireproof lockbox I keep at my old foreman Wesley's place on the edge of town. After the flood in my basement in 2019 took out half my documents, he'd offered his box and I'd taken him up on it. The originals went to the plan administrator. I didn't think about those forms again for 6 years. Every year I put money into both accounts. I never told my son. I never mentioned it at Christmas dinner or at a birthday or on the phone. My father worked the hydro lines for 30 years. He told me once, "You don't announce the current running through the wire. It's either there or it isn't." So I stayed quiet about it because I thought that was dignity. I also sent things I made. For my granddaughter's 12th birthday, a hand-bound leather journal with her initials burned into the cover. She'd mentioned once that she liked writing things down, and I'd taught myself bookbinding over a winter from a library book. For my grandson, when he said he wanted to learn to fly fish, I tied him 12 flies by hand over 6 weeks. elk hair caddis, Adams, woolly bugger, pheasant tail nymph. I packed them in a cedar box I'd built, with a handwritten page of notes about which pattern worked for which fish, in which kind of water, because I'd been fishing the rivers up here for 30 years, and I knew things he didn't yet. Those were the packages on my step. I carried them inside. I didn't open them. I set them on the workbench and looked at them. Then I went to the kitchen and found the mail from the past 2 months I hadn't done anything with. Bills, flyers, a hardware catalog, and near the bottom, a padded envelope with a December postmark. I remembered getting it. I'd glanced at it, seen a stack of forms with yellow flags sticking out, and set it aside. Loretta had made me promise years ago, never sign anything without Cynthia sitting next to you. So I'd put it down and not thought about it again. Now I sat at the kitchen table and read it. There was a sticky note on top in my daughter-in-law's handwriting, round, cheerful letters. Hi, Dad. Just some paperwork. Sign where the yellow tags are and send it back. Thanks. 2 exclamation points. I peeled the note off. The form underneath said, in capital letters across the top, RESP subscriber change form. I sat there for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A snowplow went by outside. I called Cynthia. She drove up the next morning, 2 hours in February weather. She sat down, opened the form, and read it twice. Then she looked up at me. Morris, do you know what this does? Makes her the subscriber. Makes her everything. She can withdraw the money. She can change the beneficiaries. She can close the accounts tomorrow morning. Cynthia's voice was very flat. The kids are the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries have no rights. They can't object. They can't stop anything. They're just names on a piece of paper. I looked at the yellow flags. 3 of them, every one pointing at the subscriber change line. How much is in the accounts? Cynthia turned her laptop around. I looked at the numbers for a long time. $94,160 across both accounts. 8 years of monthly contributions, plus the government grants. The CESG adds 20% on the first $2,500 every year, building quietly in the background the way things do when you leave them alone long enough. Cynthia closed the laptop. Then she said, in a tone I didn't like, Morris, how is your daughter-in-law's business doing? Fine, I think. She does home staging. She typed for a minute, turned the screen around again. The business had opened 14 months ago. She'd taken out a home equity line of credit, $120,000 against the house my son had spent 11 years paying down. The business had been losing money for 11 straight months. There was an unpaid invoice from a furniture supplier filed with the province. I ran the numbers the way I run wire calculations, slow, then again. They don't hate me, I said. No, Cynthia said. They need you off the paperwork. Those are 2 different things. Only one of them requires them to treat you like a stranger. I thought about the sticky note. Hi, Dad. I thought about my son's voice on the speakerphone. We think it's better. Not we. I went to Wesley's place that afternoon. He's 72 now and still opens his shop every morning out of habit, even though his hands shake too much for fine work. I asked if the lockbox was still there. He said, "Course it is." He got it open and handed me a manila envelope, soft with age. Inside were the copies of the original RESP applications, my signature on the subscriber line 3 times, and Loretta's signature on the witness line 3 times in handwriting I would know in my sleep. And behind the forms, folded in thirds, a sheet of paper I had never seen before. Loretta's handwriting. Morris, your daughter-in-law has asked me about the children's education money 3 times. The last time she asked, I had a needle in my arm in the infusion suite. I didn't tell you because you would have blamed yourself and gone quiet. That's what you do. You go quiet and call it respect, and it isn't. So listen to me. Don't sign the subscriber change, you hold the line. Not because you can't trust our son. Because our son is not strong enough to hold it himself, and he knows it, and it has shamed him his whole life. Hold the line, Morris. Don't you let go of it, L. I sat down on an upturned milk crate in the middle of Wesley's shop and stayed there for about 90 minutes. He made a pot of coffee and set a mug near my foot and went off to organize a shelf of hardware that didn't need organizing. That's who Wesley is. I said out loud to nobody in that shop but the sawdust, I understand now. I told Cynthia I wasn't signing. She asked if it was to punish them. I said no. I said Loretta asked me to hold the line, and I was going to hold it. 3 weeks passed. I worked on the cedar box in the evenings, Hand-cut dovetails because a router makes a different joint and you can tell the difference if you've done both. Brass hinges. No lock. My granddaughter's name burned into the lid with a wood-burning iron. Over those 3 nights, I made 4 phone calls. The first was to Cynthia. The second was to Wesley. The third was to the RESP plan administrator's office. And I sat on hold for 19 minutes listening to a recording tell me my call was important. The fourth was to a number I had looked up and never dialed before. A woman picked up on the second ring. Somewhere behind her, a filing drawer rolled shut. I told her who I was and why I was calling. She came back with a file. Yes, Mr. Daltrey, I have the accounts right here. A pause. How are you related to the beneficiaries? And I answered with a word I had not been allowed to use in 2 months. I'm their grandfather, I said, and I'm the subscriber. Before we go any further, take a second to like and leave a comment with where you're watching from. I do read them now. My granddaughter texted me 2 weeks later from a friend's phone. Grandpa, did you send me a package at Christmas? Mom said the post office returned it by mistake. I looked at that message for 10 minutes. Then I typed yes, a leather journal. Your name on the cover, you didn't get it. The dots appeared, went away, appeared again. No, I didn't even know. Then, Grandpa, Mom says you haven't sent anything in years. I walked to the bench where the 2 return packages were still sitting. I took a photo of them. The return to sender sticker. Her name crossed out in thick black marker. I sent it without typing a single word. The dots appeared, went away, appeared, went away. That happened 4 times. Then, I'm in the garage. Then, Grandpa, there's a lot. I typed, a lot of what? She didn't answer for 4 hours. I ate dinner standing at the counter. I sanded a joint that was already smooth. At 9:45, the phone lit up and kept lighting up. 7 photographs, dark room, phone flash. She'd pulled a storage bin out from under a workbench. The leather journal, still in the tissue paper I'd wrapped it in. Ribbon still tied, bow still square. Nobody had ever touched it. The cedar fly box, still sealed with the wax paper tape I'd run across the lid. A picture frame from 3 Christmases ago. 2 birthday cards in envelopes with my handwriting on them. A wooden letter holder I'd made the year before. The last photo was a close-up of the bin itself, a strip of blue painter's tape stuck to the side, words in black marker, deal with later, K. I set the phone down on the bench and put both hands flat on the wood. She texted again. I used the library desk at school. I thought we couldn't afford furniture. I sat down on my shop stool. I typed slow. Because I thought if I had to explain a gift, it stopped being a gift and started being a receipt. I was wrong. I hit send, then I typed one more line. There's a cedar box in that bin, with your brother's name on it. Give it to him. Tell him to look at the underside of the lid. She didn't answer that night, but the next morning she sent one text. He cried. Then, Mom found my phone. My daughter-in-law called that afternoon. The warmth she normally kept in her voice was gone. You are going behind my back to a 17-year-old girl. She asked me a question. I told her the truth. You are destabilizing this family. I'm answering questions about Christmas presents. If you show up at her graduation, I will make it very difficult for you. I looked out the window over the sink. A public high school gymnasium is public property. She kept talking. They always keep talking. And then she said it. Dad, if you really want to show these kids you care about their future, there's a much simpler way. Do you still have those forms I sent you? There it was. She'd put it on the table herself. A seat at my granddaughter's graduation in exchange for a signature on a subscriber change form. She didn't hear what she'd said. People like that rarely do. They're so used to the trade going through that they forget it's a trade. I had a sentence ready in my mouth. I didn't say it. I said, I remember the forms, and I hung up. Then I went out to the shop and kept working on the cedar box. The graduation was on a Friday afternoon in June. The gymnasium at the high school holds about 400 people on folding chairs. I got there 50 minutes early and sat in the back row on the far left. I had the cedar box on my knees and my suit jacket buttoned, even though it was pushing 28 degrees inside. My son and daughter-in-law came in and took seats in the third row. She had a wide-brimmed hat. She turned around once and scanned the room the way you do when you're looking for someone you'd rather not find. She saw me. She went completely still for 2 full seconds. Then she turned back and put her hand on my son's arm. They read the names in alphabetical order. About 90 kids in the graduating class. Then my granddaughter's name. She walked across the stage, shook the principal's hand, took her diploma tube, and then she stopped at the edge of the stage and put her hand over her eyes against the gymnasium lights and looked out at the back row. She was looking for somebody. She found me. She raised that diploma over her head and held it out toward me. 400 people turned around to see who she was holding it for. I didn't stand up, I just nodded once, quiet to myself, good work, kid. After the ceremony, the gymnasium emptied into a warm June afternoon. My granddaughter came straight across the parking lot, still in her gown. She stopped in front of me and said it loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Grandpa, come to the party, I'm inviting you." My daughter-in-law got there in seconds. "Sweetheart." My granddaughter turned around, 17 years old, and she didn't raise her voice one note. "Mom, it's my graduation." Right then the principal walked over with his hand already out, smiling the way a man smiles when he has no idea what he's walked into. "You must be the grandfather. Your granddaughter brought a set of hand-tied flies into biology last spring and explained the entomology behind everyone. I'd never seen anything quite like it." I shook his hand. My daughter-in-law stood there with her mouth slightly open. She could not say no, not with the principal standing there, not with 30 parents in earshot. So she smiled. It was a smile like the edge of a chisel. "Of course," she said. "Come on, Dad." The backyard party was maybe 30 people. Folding tables with paper tablecloths, a sheet cake, a Bluetooth speaker playing country radio. I stood near the back gate with the cedar box under my arm. I didn't talk to anyone and no one talked to me. In a dress shirt at a backyard barbecue, I looked like a man who'd come to shut off the power. Cynthia came in through the side gate around 2 o'clock and stood by the recycling bins. She didn't come over. There was no plan. That was the plan. Then a woman in a blazer came through the gate with a folder, looking for someone. Her name is Brenda Hollis. She works at the local credit union in loans and savings. Every June she stops by a handful of graduation parties for the top students and gets RESP paperwork signed before the July deadline, so accounts are ready for September tuition payments. She's done it for 9 years. She was just doing her job. She found my daughter-in-law near the cake, introduced herself, opened the folder. "I need the subscriber's signature on your daughter's RESPIC account to finalize the transfer for September." My daughter-in-law said, "I can sign that." Brenda looked down at the form, looked up again. Her expression shifted, not unkind, just puzzled, the way you look when the wiring doesn't match the diagram. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not the subscriber on this account." She looked out across the yard at 30 people holding paper plates. She raised her voice, clear and pleasant, and completely, without any idea of what she was about to do to that backyard. "Excuse me, everyone. Is there a Morris Daltrey here? I need the subscriber's signature." Someone turned off the music. 30 people turned around. Back by the gate, an old electrician in a dress shirt raised his hand. "That's me," I said. I walked through the middle of that yard. People moved without quite moving. I set the cedar box down on the folding table, between the paper plates and the sheet cake. Brenda opened her folder and read from her file. "Account 1, beneficiary." She said my granddaughter's full name, Sakaisber Morris Daltrey. Opened October 2016. Current balance, $52,480. Somebody's fork hit a plate. Account 2, beneficiary. She said my grandson's name, Sakaisber Morris Daltrey. Balance $41,620. The yard was quiet enough that I could hear the neighbor's air conditioner running 2 houses down. My granddaughter turned to her mother. Her voice was very small. "You said we couldn't afford university. You don't understand." "I understand the numbers." My son hadn't said a word. He was staring at the cedar box. I opened it. Inside were 8 envelopes, stacked in order, every one of them still sealed, postmarks running from 2017 to 2024. Year-end statements, 1 per year, clipped to each one, a handwritten note. Same words every time, written out longhand because typing it would have felt cheap. Balance as of December 31. Call me if you have questions, CS. "Cynthia stopped by last week," I said. I looked at my son. "She called your wife about picking up an old toolbox from the garage. Found these in a storage bin under your workbench. All 8 of them, still sealed." I set the envelopes on the table. You don't have to open them now, but you should know I sent them, 8 years running, and I signed my name to everyone. My son's voice came out wrecked, like a beam splitting under a load it wasn't built for. You never came to my hockey games. Nobody in that yard breathed. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the notebook I've kept since I was 22. Red cover cracked down the spine. I opened it to a page near the middle, turned it around, and held it out to him. 43 lines in pencil, dates, rink names, scores. Sept 14, 1996, Barrie Arena. He scored with 4 minutes left, couldn't hear the buzzer over the crowd. Oct 3, 1996, away game, Collingwood. He sat the bench all third period. He was fine in the car on the way home, he wasn't fine. Nov 22, 1996, playoffs. He got the assist on the winning goal, didn't know I was there. 40 more like that. I said it quiet. I stood at the far end by the Zamboni door. I still had grease on my hands from the job site. I didn't want to embarrass you in front of your teammates. I looked at him. You never saw me, I was always there. My son took the notebook in both hands. He put 2 fingers on the line about the Collingwood game, and then my son sat down on his own back deck steps in front of 30 of his neighbors and put his face in his hands. 46 years old. And I stood there in that backyard and understood what I had built in him without meaning to. I taught him that love is a thing you show with your hands and never say with your mouth. And he believed me so well that he decided I had never been there at all. I signed my granddaughter's RESP paperwork right there on the folding table, with Brenda's pen next to a bowl of pasta salad. I want you to hear that. I didn't make a speech. I didn't point at anyone. I just signed my name where it needed to go. The following Tuesday, I drove to Guelph and sat in Cynthia's office for 2 hours. 3 things, all ordinary, all legal. Any accountant in this province could have walked you through them. 1. I transferred the subscriber on my granddaughter's account to my granddaughter herself. She turns 18 in August. Cynthia holds it as custodian for the 6 weeks in between. 2. My grandson's account went into a trust. Cynthia as trustee. The money disperses directly to an accredited institution. It does not pass through anyone's bank account on the way. 3. I did not take a single dollar out, not one. It was never mine. I was just holding the door. My son and daughter-in-law lost access to $94,000 they never had access to in the first place. The staging business closed in September. The home equity line came due. They sold the house in November and moved into a rental across town. I didn't take their house. $120,000 borrowed against equity. They'd spent 11 years building did that. All I did was stop being a safety net that nobody knew was there. 3 weeks after the party, there was an envelope in my mailbox with no stamp on it. Someone had driven it out and put it in by hand. Inside was 1 sheet of paper with 3 words on it. I was wrong. Not we've been talking. First time in 20 years my son used that word about himself. The next morning, I went to open the workshop at 6:15, and there was a car parked on the road out front. Frost on the windows, he'd been sitting out there all night. I didn't wave him in. I unlocked the shop door and left it standing open. 40 minutes later, he came in. He walked to the lumber rack and put his hand on a piece of red oak without saying anything. "What's this one?" he asked. "Red oak, hardest one I stock, shows every mistake you make." He didn't turn around. "I thought you cared more about the work than about us." The sawdust hung in the light from the small window. Neither of us said anything for a while. "I tied those flies thinking about your son sitting in a river somewhere, learning to read the water the way my father taught me to read it," I said. I wasn't thinking about the thread or the hooks. I was thinking about him. My son put his hand over his eyes. Then he asked me something quietly. "Did you know she was coming to the graduation, my wife?" "No." He turned around. "I did." His voice went. "I saw your truck in the parking lot, 50 minutes early, back row, far left." Same as always, he looked at me, and I didn't say anything to stop you. That's the only thing I got right in 2 years. And I understood. He'd chosen late, but he'd chosen. My daughter-in-law never apologized. Not to me, not to my granddaughter, not to anyone in that backyard. Some people don't have it in them. Pretending otherwise would be a lie. She moved to her sister's place in the spring. She and my son separated in March. That wasn't me. When the money they'd been counting on wasn't there, the thing holding them together went with it. My granddaughter is at the University of Guelph now studying architecture. She took the leather journal with her. She sends me photos of the filled pages sometimes, not the words themselves, just the lines of ink. That's enough. My grandson has been out fly fishing with me 3 times. Last September, he caught a brook trout on a woolly bugger from the cedar box. He texted me a photo at 6:47 in the morning. I have it taped to the wall of the workshop next to the light switch. My son comes to the workshop Tuesday and Thursday mornings before he leaves for work. He is a slow learner and his hands are soft, and he has wasted more red oak than I care to think about. He keeps showing up. I asked him once who he was building the table for. My son, he said. He's never gotten one from me. Last Saturday, my grandson sat on the workbench and I showed him how to tie an elk hair caddis. His hands are too big for the thread bobbin yet. He dropped it 6 times and picked it up 6 times without being told to. I got the notebook out and opened to a clean page. August 2026, workshop. Teaching the caddis. He dropped the bobbin 6 times. He didn't quit. I put the rubber band back around it and set it on the shelf. People ask me if I've forgiven my son. Here's what I tell them. Forgiving isn't forgetting. Forgiving is unlocking the shop in the morning and leaving the door open and letting him decide whether to walk through it. I still check every connection before I close the panel. I still measure twice. But now when I hand something to somebody, I say what it is out loud, not to turn it into a receipt, just so they know it came from me. My son got the thread tension wrong on the bobbin this morning. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder to slow him down. He didn't pull away. That's the whole of it.